Hello, hello. Welcome to the Barcoding Huddle. We're very excited to be with you today. I'm your host, Jody Costa. I'm the VP of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships for Barcoding Incorporated. Barcoding is a supply chain automation and innovation company helping other organizations become more efficient, accurate, and connected. These huddles have been a great way for us to get to know some of our most important and strategic partners. And today, we're very, very pleased to bring you a session with Ignition by Telus. You're going to get to learn all about how their software and their solutions can help you regain some control within your supply chain. So one of the things that we're going to mix up today in terms of the huddle is we're actually going to start with a video. And for those of you who have been with us in past events, you know that we jump right into these very great conversations. But today we're going to start with a video, and I think it's important to kind of get you excited about what's to come. This video is going to give you a great sense of what we're going to talk about today in terms of Ignition, and really give you a lot to think about. And as you watch the video, as we start these conversations, make sure you use the chat. You can put your questions in live for our panelists, and we will get to those as soon as we can. So without further ado, I'm going to share this video. It's very short, so take a listen, and then we're going to dive right into this conversation.
We're looking for a solution that would help us to regain control of our operation and shrink the cost of the business.
It makes you kind of scour your financials a little more and say, what other possibilities are there that are slipping through the cracks?
2 hours downtime for us will kill you. We're on the smaller scale size of company that they service, but they give us the attention of probably a 500 route customer.
We thought we were capturing 100% or close to of the monies that were due or available to us, and only through really reviewing our year-end financials after being on AFS suite of solutions for a year did we notice that, wow, making that transition gained us 1.5%.
In the last 9 years, we've increased our business 500%. So we've grown it 5 times. Our technology allowed us to keep up with that growth. We're now 1 in 5,000 on mispicks.
We have reduced our out of stocks at the store level almost by 15 to 20%.
Our sales had grown 19.7%.
We were able to shrink our labor cost by almost 30%.
And even processes that we weren't doing that just helped us better ourselves.
Lowered our average inventory by almost 23%.
We were thrilled to see that. And that's not the only efficiency that we had gained. They had a good understanding of our business model and where the industry is going to head in the future.
Awesome. So hopefully that inspired you and got you excited for today's conversation. Incredible results being shared by those customers in the video that we're going to dive into. Customers seeing their businesses increase by 19%, growing, by 5 times, reducing inventory, 1 in 5,000 mispicks. Really, really great results that I'm excited to dive into. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and ask all of my panelists to join me on camera, and go ahead and take yourself off mute. And we are going to get rolling here. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, Jody. Thank you.
Very well.
And I don't care what anybody says. I like the intro music.
I love the video.
The video too.
I'm glad. I love the video too, and I'm really glad we were able to kind of set the stage with that video. So I know that you guys have a ton of experience that you're bringing to the table for us today. So we're going to start with some very brief introductions, but just to give everybody a little bit of sense of who you are, what specialty you bring to the table, maybe even tell us where you're broadcasting from today. So I'm just going to go around the room. We'll do some quick intros, and then we'll get started. So Jonathan, you're in my left, so I'm going to go ahead and start with you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jody. Thanks you for having us here. Really appreciate it, and our partnership with Barcoding. My name's Jonathan Green, Senior Vice President of Customer Development for Ignition. Like many in the, we're going to talk a little bit about food, but there's a lot of overlap there. But like many in the food industry, I grew up in it. My family owned food distributorships, but more importantly, my father went off and wrote a computer system in the 70s for food distributors. And like many, I've followed in the steps of my parents. I got involved in that business. So I've spent the last 26 years, I believe it is now, working with food companies, processors, distributors, and manufacturers of all types, shapes, and sizes to bring innovation into their businesses.
It's impressive. We're really thrilled to have you, and it's so admirable the work that you've done in your career so far. So thank you for being here. Jim, you are next up in my Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, good day all. Thanks for having us. I'll say that again. My career, if you take a look at my world in 3 sections, I started out in the late 70s, but the first section, I was what we would call a customer, end user, perishable, bakery specifically. And that was squarely in the middle of early adoption for supply chain automation. That was so much fun that in the 90s, I moved into developing software for that as well. And then for those of you that might recognize the name, I spent 16 years with Zebra Technology, symbol Motorola Zebra, and before joining Ignition as the Director of Product and Sales Strategy.
That's great. And I know based on some of the registration comments, there's quite a few folks out in the audience who recognized your name and are excited to see the familiar face. So welcome. Appreciate you being here. David, you're up next.
Well, no question for 100 or anything like that. It's Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, exactly.
You got an X.
I'll take a little bit backwards because it's easier for me to remember the older I get. So currently, I'm the senior sales consultant with Ignition from Telus Agriculture. And I've been doing this now for about the last 3 decades. Prior to that, I was in the restaurant industry. I worked as a general manager and a regional manager for 2 different national chains. But prior to that, my education is in flight. I went through Embry-Riddle here in Daytona Beach, Florida, where I still live, but that doesn't pay the bills. So that's how I got involved in the restaurants. And it's been about a 35-year journey.
That's awesome. I love that. And hopefully everyone can see the scope of experience that's coming to the table today. So welcome, David. We're thrilled to have you here. And Peter, to round out the group, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm the Senior Supply Chain Architect here at Barcoding and the Director of Partner Solutions. I've started off my industry experience right after being a high school teacher and got into engineering and supporting automatic identification and data collection technologies, and just basically grew up from there. I started back when barcodes were being scanned as either code 39 or code 128, not both. And have seen it go all the way to the level of blockchain right now. So it's been quite an amazing journey to both witness and help provide solutions for.
Yeah, no, and we are happy that you're part of our barcoding community and family and head supply chain geek for us. So thank you for being here, Peter. I'm actually going to come back to you. So we're going to dive in with the Ignition team, and then we'll bring Peter back in a little bit. So thank you for being here. So for those of us, we're getting into the huddle, right? And for those who registered for this, we talked about regaining control of your supply chain. But, I'm observant. I watched that video and there was a lot to do in food distribution. So I kind of want to know, let's talk about how you guys grew up. It seems like you have a really good fit in food and distribution, but we want to talk about supply chain. So talk to me about why you guys are expert enough to talk about wider supply chain issues beyond just food. And I'm going to start with you, Jim, and then we'll bat it all around.
All right, very good. So if you think about supply chain management in this 2021, the common need, I'm going to use 2 common denominator words, visibility and connectivity. That is increasingly critical to anyone that has to deal with the supply chain. I don't care if you're moving nuts and bolts or what it is. The interesting part, if you've never delved into food and beverage, is that's been critical to the food and beverage industry going back maybe 20 years. I can remember, I'll keep their names to myself, but I can remember one meeting I was sitting in where an analyst was effectively lecturing a major beverage operation. And he was critical that they were thinking north-south, as in silos in their solutions. So all their mobile workers were essentially connected very archaically back to the house. And his comment to them is, you people are thinking north-south. The one that gets the competitive advantage is the one that starts thinking east-west. And bring that forward. That stuck with me to this day. Bring that forward to your question specifically. What that person was talking about was connectivity and visibility has been super critical in food and beverage for a long time.
That's great. I'll let Jonathan, David, any further comments there that you guys wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, I could jump in. You know, you might have saw in the video that, you know, we use purpose-built quite a bit, right? So, you know, purpose-built, you know, for food exists, there's a niche for us. And part of the reason is it's like the Sinatra song, you know, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, right? Because food has a lot of complexities in it, a lot of differences. And we do have customers outside of food. So hopefully, you know, those, when we start talking about food, if you're not in food, you stay with us on the call. There is a lot of overlap. And I think the reason is because we have to deal with so many differences. Some of the major examples, you know, we have to deal with lots of different units of measure, right? So people that sell widgets tend to sell the piece. You know, we sell, let's think of apples, right? We sell apples maybe by the pallet, by the case, by the individual apple. Maybe I sell apples by the pound. Maybe I sell it by a 3-pound bag or a 5-pound bag that I rekit. So, you know, it's not a lot of systems have the capability to be able to sell an item by a piece, but also sell it by the pound, but have inventory tie back to the same unit of measure. So in our system, we have to track a purchase by unit of measure, a sell by unit of measure, an inventory by unit of measure, right, within our system. Think of, for example, a catch weight item. Catch weight's a term that we use in the industry you might not be familiar with. Think of something when you go to the retail supermarket and you're going to buy a whole chicken, right? That's a catch weight item. You're going to buy the chicken, but it's priced by the pound. So, you know, every chicken has got a different price. Well, that adds a lot of complexity into the process. So if I'm in inventory, for example, it's great from a warehouse perspective to know that I have a case of chickens. But from an inventory valuation perspective, I need to know the weights of those chickens so that I know how much money I have tied up in inventory. Or if I'm doing e-commerce, for example, and I'm selling a whole chicken online, I can't necessarily price that invoice until it ships because I don't know what the weight of that individual chicken is going to be until it's put onto the order and it's ready for sale, for delivery.
Right.
You know, Jonathan, and it's not only the cost and the complexity of that, but think about all the product information that has to be served. You know, in order for someone to buy a chicken, a restaurant operator, they have to know what the nutritional values are, the allergens, the benefits, the suggested servings, all that information that gets served by those manufacturers. It's critical information. You know, and cutting teeth in this industry, you know, is one of the most highly regulated industries. Certainly, it serves us very well for other distribution models.
Yep. So these days, everybody wants to know what's going in their body, right? And they want to know from a sustainability perspective, was it green? What was it? How was it caught? Right. So we have to deal with lots of different proteins that have, you know, I need to know where it was harvested. I need to know what country it came from. I need to know what method of catch it was. Like if it was seafood, was it caught on a line, or was it trapped, or is it farmed? You know, we need to know all of that. So we track something like 400 attributes of a product to be able to provide the detail that the consumers need to be able to buy that product. Think of something like Campbell's soup, right? Seems pretty generic and basic, but for a nursing home, it's not so much. When they need a tomato soup that has less than so many milligrams of sodium, right? So having that information that's consumable is extremely important to us. We deal with a lot of government mandates. You know, a lot of industries deal with government mandates, but for us, it really means food safety and traceability. So we have to track every single case and the lot associated with that case when it comes in the door until the point that we deliver it. So at any one moment in time, we need to be able to run a report in a matter of seconds that said, okay, this lot came in on these 2 purchase orders. I have these cases, they're sitting in these locations in the warehouse, and I shipped it to these 10 customers on this date, on this invoice, and be able to recall those items if we need to. We deal with multiple temperature zones, which is, you know, something that most folks don't have to deal with. And that might seem somewhat, generic too, but it's really not. There's a lot of complexity behind how you select your orders, how you build orders, how you load trucks because of the warehouse. You don't want guys going in and out of a negative degrees freezer. You might have a guy that's in there all day long and he's picking orders, and then guys come by in a wave and they select it from his area and merge the order in. But when we're building trucks, we have to know how many pallet positions we have in the freezer compartment. And is that truck configured with a center aisle? Is there a bulkhead? How is that truck configured? Does it have a side door? So when we build all of our trucks for delivery, we have to make it such a way that the driver's not climbing over things in order to get the product out the door. So we deal with stackability issues.
Yeah.
You can't, when we're building pallets in the warehouse, we can't have them put down eggs and then throw 50-pound sacks of flour on top of it.
That would be very messy.
Exactly. So we have to deal with
expensive.
like that.
And expensive, yes, that's right.
And pricing and costing, that's important in any industry, but I have to tell you, it's sort of the Wild West in the food industry. It's like selling used cars. Everybody gets a different price. And it's generally a cost plus industry, but there's a gazillion different costs. Which cost am I going to use? We have costs that are based on our purchasing costs, and we have costs that are based on selling, right? So, we have a landed costs and inventory costs. We might have layered costs. We might have average costs. But when it comes time to sell, we're in an industry with a lot of fluctuation. So I need to tie pricing to market costs, which could be totally different than when I actually paid for the item. So there's a lot of fluctuation. And then of course your sales team, you need to protect an inside margin to make sure that, those trucks running the trucks and running the freezers and everything else are covered, that you have burdens and cost elements and such built in so that you're accounting for that. So
I mean, it sounds like, I loved your quote, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. It sounds like by being purpose built for food distribution and beverage distribution, you have covered you have flexibility in your system that can cover the gamut.
That's the key, right? That's the key. Exactly, Jody. It's flexibility. And we do work with companies in other verticals. I mean, we deal with chemical companies. We have guys that deal with watch parts and shoe repair and you name it. But, we are focused on food, but as I said, smart companies that are looking for products that can be flexible, especially ones that have a product line that's very varied and have unique concerns, come to us because they know where our system could probably handle it.
Yeah, one of the great things, Jody, I'm sorry to stop you there, but one of the great things is the configuration of our systems.
Yeah.
We do customization when necessary, but through everything we've learned on the last 3 decades of demand experience, it came down to configuration. And I know we're running short, so
Well, if I could jump in one more. So CRM is a great example of that, right? Everybody works with CRM.
Right.
For us, a lot of systems that we've worked with Salesforce, we've worked with, HubSpot, we've worked with Microsoft CRM, and they're all kind of designed the same way. They're designed for companies like ours that sell software, right? Where I have a lead and the lead becomes an opportunity and the opportunity goes through the funnel until eventually you win it or lose it. Well, do you think folks sell string beans that way? No, right? So to have a CRM type module, which a lot of companies do, it doesn't fit the way they sell. So what they need to know is where are my opportunities to place a certain item? So very quickly being able to say, okay, well, show me any customer broken out by salesmen that bought more than 5 cases of frying oil, but isn't buying French fries from me, for example.
Right.
And then having that hit list and then putting out into the order management system, putting those items right at the top and highlighting them so that you can draw them to the attention, maybe having a promotion built around it for those specific customers. Because again, the marketing components and the flexibility and the pricing to be able to drive line item penetration and margin management.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really stands out to me is something that we talk a lot about here at Barcoding, which is really having data that's usable in order to kind of improve processes, improve people's experiences, improve customer experiences, right? So the technology has a job to do, the data has a job to do. It's not just, there for the sake of having technology. So I love this concept that the data that you guys are looking at really needs to benefit the business, right? So it needs to match your workflows and your operations in order to provide that benefit for your customers or your users. I think we saw this, kind of come to light, this concept that we have to become more efficient with our data. We have to have better visibility with our data coming out of the pandemic. I mean, what greater example of people really understanding that they need to dive inside their business and understand these workflows than having to deal with such a major disruptor in the market. So David, I'm going to come to you, and we're not going to belabor the COVID-19 point, but I think it's important to talk about that disruption and think about what might be facing companies in supply chain processes going forward, kind of as a result of that.
You know, if we were talking about what was going to be a permanent fixture, because there's been certainly a lot of changes that have come because of COVID,
Right.
and rightfully so. You know, I think, you know, personally, one of the things that I know my family truly appreciated about the changes were those conveniences that came about. You know, I personally couldn't stand shopping, but I did it because I wanted to have more control over the family expenses, but didn't like spending that time, so on and so forth. But the ability to place an order online and have that order show up at your house, similar to the way that a restaurant operator places their order online and has that come back to the distributor, those kind of conveniences, they can't go away.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing is that the people that are servicing us with those conveniences, they're not going to take them away. They like to see what's happening because, you know, I use a term that's very visual. It's a meat hook, right? When you provide that type of a service, you literally make that dependency with that consumer or that customer. And I really like that because the dependency means, you know, survivability. Some operators have had to change their entire model. You know,
Right.
Many of my friends that I grew up with in the industry have closed their doors and are now having a really hard time reopening or opening at full scale capacity, even if they're allowed to by the state, because they can't bring the labor back. The labor's shifted elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I know they're having a lot of problems. They moved into, some of my friends have created, you know, not created, but they're operating as a ghost kitchen. They really don't have a brick and mortar, but they've maintained their delivery aspect of the restaurant to keep the name going in hopes that things will come back and they'll be able to go back into a brick and mortar. But, you know, and the same things are true when we look at our distributor customers. They changed a lot, you know, and as you heard one of our customers mention, it was because of the ability for them to be agile through our software. When this came about, when COVID came about, we all saw dramatic changes in whether or not you could actually source product at your local supermarket or what have you. But restaurants had a hard time getting food. Everybody was having a hard time getting food. And our customers opened their doors and also, you know, opened up their services and their driver teams to really help make a difference.
That's Jonathan, I think I heard you pipe in there too. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say to David's point with some of the operators that, you know, when we talk about operators, we're talking primarily the restaurateurs at this point, but you know, some of them have changed their business model. You know, it was all about being flexible, right? So if you can't have people in your seats, so switching to a takeout option, and the takeout's been so successful, some of these businesses may never go back. They're just going to operate as takeout businesses. They found that, you know, not having to deal with wait staff and other problems in the kitchen or in the dining room were a benefit, and folks were still willing to take their product home. You know, but flexibility was the critical piece, and that's where, you know, the success of the companies that were able to make it through this well were the ones that were able to adapt. You know, we service both sides of food distribution, right? So we have wholesale grocers that service the retail side, and food service distributors handling the nursing homes, the camp, schools, and in the restaurants that were all but shut down. So the restaurants or the food service distributors were killed. I mean, their business were down 60-70%. But we had distributors and retailers on the other side were seeing huge spikes. We had one customer up in Canada. It's a very large national retailer that distributes to 2,000 of their own stores. They saw a 300% spike in volume.
Whoa.
But the cool thing is, you know, with our systems and the right processes in place, they were able to absorb the craziness in their supply chain and the spikes and volume without adding additional labor, without having to, and still get trucks out on time, right? So on the food service side, it was flexibility for them to be creative. It was a way to find opportunities to move product out the door. It was educating their customers. It was helping them to transition from you know, dining rooms into to takeout businesses. We had one customer that hired a CPA that would go around to their key accounts to help them file papers for the payroll protection program.
Wow,
If you can't,
that's
That
so
was
good.
brilliant. That was
About the
brilliant.
customer, that's brilliant. Yeah.
if you can't enable your customers to ensure that they're going to stay in business, you don't have a business when
Right.
everything returns. So that's where the focus became. It was on education, and we tried to do a good job, the best job that we could early on as well. We started bringing our customers together for online forums to pitch ideas, and we heard a lot of collaboration that happened. Food distributors, for example, food service folks loaning drivers and warehousemen to retailers so that they can get product out the door, because they couldn't find, they're running so much business, they didn't have the trucks. So they were working in conjunction with each other to get product out the door. So,
and speaking of that point, Jonathan, one of the greatest enhancements that came from those conversations was about protecting the drivers and the customers. And Jim, what was it you guys developed on the POD and the DSD side, the contactless delivery, Jim?
Yeah. Effectively, if you think about the aggregation of deliveries that happen in the back room of a grocery store, and now you say, wait a minute, I've got to touch that person's mobile computer, I've got to sign their screen, and this, that, and the other. And our team essentially developed the ability to have a contactless signature system built right into the direct store delivery tools.
It's a great solution, Jody, because it looks great to your customers that you're protecting them, but from a selfish perspective, you're really protecting your drivers who were really hard to find, keep, and it was a great tool to protect them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I mean,
I can jump back to the conversation Jonathan had, both of them had, about being agile, and leap over to that food and beverage and supplying the grocery store. I would go back to a pre-COVID study that rings in my head, that there was, to the retail grocer, there was a 76% confidence rate that their inventory on the shelf was actually accurate. 76%. 1 in 4 products were wrong. Now jump into the point where now we're in a buy online, pick up in store. Well, they're looking at the customers. We consumers are looking at a website that says, I want to order 20, or I want to order 5. And if that is not sitting on that shelf, think about the entire customer service model that breaks down.
right.
Agile means not fleet of foot. Agile in this environment means a flexible solution, piece of software that connects and gives that visibility that I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's so many questions swimming around in my head because it's such a big topic, but I want to touch very briefly on this because I think it's top of mind, and this is about the drivers. So I love this example of keeping the drivers safe, as well as looking out for the customer experience. But we also know, I think most of us on the call have been seeing the news, right? We are experiencing severe shortages on the driver side, as well as just in general across lots of different pools of labor. David, I'm curious, how are you guys working with your customers dealing with this type of disruption?
One of the things that Jonathan pointed out earlier was, as soon as COVID hit, many of our food distributor customers that were providing product to restaurants and that nature, they saw 70% drop in their business. But as we noted, there was also a dramatic increase in demand for everything. So, we helped by, in these conversations that we had with our customers, we helped identify that there was opportunity to move that labor over and directly address the problems that the country was, facing. I still think that our truck drivers are probably some of the unsung heroes of, coming out of COVID. If it weren't for their ability to truly, do 18 hours a day, do what they have to do. Well, maybe not legally 18 hours a day, but they did what they had to do to get it done. And, they were happy to do so.
I always think of the grocery, I always, throughout the pandemic too, I always thought of my grocery store workers, because I always wanted to just like throw them a big ticker tape parade, because they showed up every day, and
Well, at least you weren't trying to hug them.
I didn't hug them, no. I didn't try to hug them.
Oh no, here comes Jody.
Frowned upon.
He's a hugger. But
Well, yeah, no, that would have been frowned upon. I'm happy that to be in this world where that's coming back. But I do think it's important to always, a lot of times when we have these conversations around COVID, it's always around like, oh my gosh, like all the things that happened, almost more to a negative spin. But Jonathan, you brought it up, right? Some businesses experienced huge demand, and I'm willing to bet there's a few of those companies on the call today are kind of like, what do I do? So talk, to the group. I'll start with you, Jonathan, but talk to me about what you attribute some of that success to, and how you guys can really help with those companies who are experiencing a big boom in their supply chain and distributorships.
Yeah, so a lot of it, again, ties back to flexibility, having systems in place that are best practice, and software products in place that allow them to adjust. So dealing with that company up in Canada, for example, with a 300% spike, they were able to quickly move product around to get the fast moving product in, perhaps, for the volumes of the items. Some items were up, 50%, some items were 300%. So they had to quickly use the software to identify where these giant spikes were. They also had to understand which product wasn't coming in the door, so that they could free up utilization areas in the warehouse and free up cube and locations, so that they could put some of this product in, so they're not tripping over it in the aisles. So our system really much helped them to do that. For the others, like the food service side, again, it's flexibility. It comes down to being able to identify which products they can move and which they can't, which products they could get, which they can't. Managing good partner relationships. They saw, for example, where they have contracts with customers that they have to provide product, but they can have no inventory that's available. So being quickly able to find a suitable substitute and being able to bring that in and bring it in at the right price and cost with a supplier that's going to be able to get the product in the door has been tricky. So I don't put all of the benefit or the success on our software. I really put it on the creativity of our customers that have been able to get through this. But, just like Scavuzzo's in the beginning, he claims he did grow his business 5 times over. We don't take claim for that, but we do say that our system helped him to grow and to enable that growth without hindering his ability. It's the same thing in the time of COVID. Is you need a system that's in place, that's not rigid, that can change with you, so that when something like this does happen, you have the ability to be flexible and to go with it, to do you need to do to be profitable and keep the doors open, to keep your people employed.
How many times do you hear, even on the mainstream news, you hear talk about productivity restraints, and you hear labor shortages and this, that, and the other? If you have a flexible system, a well-integrated system in place, that allows a good operator to grow using the technology, even if the labor is short.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about the intersection of technology and people, right? I mean, technology is only as good as it allows people to do their jobs better, right? To grow. And I love that concept. And David, I know that you're ready to jump in here, so
just real quickly, I think the most important thing that distributors that were successful during this transition, they were the ones that were able to listen. They were the ones that participated and got involved. They didn't just react, they listened. Nobody alive had ever been through something like this. So we had to listen. And I think that was the most critical thing for a lot of these companies, was sitting back and listening instead of just reacting and then, making the plan.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like these are good lessons though going forward too, right? So hopefully these good practices, listening, being there for your customers, understanding your customers, establishing flexibility and agility, those are all things we want to take forward, right? And we want to really achieve, some 360-degree view of our operations. I think that's what we're we're trying to get to. So I would love to kind of break that down a little bit further for our audience. Like, what do we really mean when we say 360 degrees? Like, what's that ideal? Jim, I'll start with you and then we can jump around.
I'll go back to even my first comment that 360 essentially says east-west. It says that one worker is at a point of activity, point of action, capturing data that someone else in the operation would benefit if they knew it at the right time. And that right time, depending on the kind of data that's captured, that right time could be in the next 5 minutes, or it could be something that's less critical in the next 5 hours. But to have a system capable of laying over the entire supply chain and providing that critical data at the right time that's the definition of 360 in my view.
Yeah, I tend to agree exactly with what Jim's saying, right? So moving away from the north-south siloed architecture of, disparate systems like an ERP with these peripherals sort of attached to it, and moving towards more of a platform view where you're looking east-west, you're looking for filling in that gray area that existed in the past where interface or integration happened, right? Knowing what's happening in real time throughout the organization is 360, and servicing the customer in a 360-degree rate. So, one of the ways that we deal with that today, because we have to be in that fast-paced environment, our customers could be selling 12 to 20,000 SKUs. They could be dealing with thousands of customers. It's very high volume and most often low margin business. So there's not a lot of room to deal with problems. They have to have an efficient way to do that. So, having anybody that's customer facing using the same tools. So that means customer service, inside sales, field sales, customers online and e-commerce, and even drivers connected in real time. So if a driver takes a customer refuses an item at the time of delivery, that the salesman knows that the warehouse knows when that happens. So that if I'm short inventory and I have 5 cases coming back that a customer refused that weren't damaged, they just didn't want them, that the warehouse gets instant visibility to that so that they can account for that when they go to allocate inventory, especially if there's a shortage, right? So it's moving all of those pieces together to be able to satisfy the customer. Also, a customer concern, going back to that CRM comment I made before, maybe a customer lodges a complaint, he gives it to the driver. Well, you want the driver to have to come back and maybe the next day the salesman could respond to it, or customer service could respond to it. You want to address it right then and there. So as soon as the driver takes that information, the salesman or the customer service people is notified and can walk through that process and even have an escalation path so to make sure that customer and that issue is resolved. That's 360 for me.
I think, Jonathan, it's actually more than 360, right? When I think of 360 degrees, I think of the XY, right? It's flat. It's a 360-degree plane. But each one of those data points that Jonathan was mentioning, the driver, the inside salesperson, the outside salesperson, the manager, the customer, they're all individual data silos. And when you bring them together, you go beyond just the flat, you've added height. So we provide a spherical view, a complete universal view of everything, because our data, all these data points are brought together and exchanged internally. So you don't have individual silos. Everybody sees the whole orb.
Yeah,
Jody, I think you can also recognize and acknowledge that none of us ever met a microphone we didn't like.
Here.
That's why we're all in the huddle together.
Is that why I saw your name 3 times on this list here?
Yeah, that's it.
I wanted to bring Peter in because so I love this concept, right? Working through all of these different business units, getting the right data to the people when they need it to do their job and to service the customers. Love all that. And I think where, Peter, I want you to chime in is, of course, we have to, that's why we're such an effective partner for Ignition, is that you have to get that data into the system, right? So of course, there's a component of data capture that we bring to the table that we kind of geek out about. So if you want to comment there.
I want to thank Jim and David both for bringing the math teacher in me just geeking to the forefront, because you brought in the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis, and the engineer says, oh, and time, don't forget time. You got to include time.
Time's my favorite thing.
Because, reality, it's all about that data governance. And unlike the broader manufacturing universe that thinks in terms of we sell and manufacture X and Y and we call it this and that. The food industry basically said, hey, we need to take as much of the BS out of how we communicate as possible and simplify it and use standards. And they're using GS1 standards for data governance. All those 400 item attributes that you're talking about, there's a standard for those. They're not reinventing the wheel with each and every individual customer. There's a way, there's best practices, and it's all wrapped in what you're doing. And for me, that's amazing because now that you can identify things, you can start sharing that information so other people can make better decisions. You take away those air gaps of what is it? Well, it's clearly identified. Here's your barcode, here's your RFID tag, here's the information you need to identify and use that particular material. Things happen a lot more smoothly that way. And not only are we identifying all of the kind of the people, places, and things, we're also identifying the events that go along with that. So when you're talking about time, each one of those time segments is the intersection of people, product, and process with time in an event order. That's traceability from end to end, from farm to fork, all the way through. You need those common data elements shared in order to be able to magnify that path, that process of just visibility to what's going on inside your inventory, what's going inside your supply chain. I mean, it's really quite amazing where we've come from. Beep. I got gum. You know, we've gone a long way from that. I mean, the fact that Ignition is purpose-built to me is simply amazing because you kind of undersell yourself. You're actually built for almost every purpose. I've been in the process industry. I've been in the discrete manufacturing industry. And all of the things that they have to do in those different environments, I don't care whether you're dealing with molten steel or flowing milk, it's still the same types of activities that are going on, and you capture it all and you find ways of extracting the costs out of those transactions so that the value is magnified. I mean, it's all about that return to value. Can you reduce the cost of delivering value? Can you reduce the time to deliver that value?
Yeah, and I think that was really what one of the clear pictures that came through with that video that we watched at the very beginning. And if you missed it, we'll be dropping that into the chat and following up so that you have a link to that. But I wanna pick it up because I think it was Portland. I have to look at my notes. Portland French, who talked about being a little bit of a smaller operation for you guys at Ignition. So I want to dive in case there's folks in the audience who are saying this all sounds amazing. However, could it really work for me? Like, how do I handle this? How do I scale if I'm on what I would consider to be the smaller side? Jim, I'll start with you.
Yeah, let me take that first stab on that one because I've done a little research here recently on literally our scope of coverage. And my friend Brian there, he was very complimentary, but the word scale comes into mind. And most of the time, particularly if you're a potential customer that's looking at this and you hear the word scale, you think, how large can you go? What Brian was calling out was our attention to him and his operation, even though he was on the smaller side of that. Now, I want to call out something that's pretty interesting in that if you peel back the onion, those applications that he uses, his operation uses of ours, serves him quite well. Regional operator that he is, that exact same application configured to suit the local needs is running in Puerto Rico, Guatemala, Germany, Austria, Spain, and all parts of North America. Oh, and New Zealand.
Don't forget.
You forgot Italy.
And Italy. So, well, they're going up next week or next month. But the word scale goes both directions. And if a listener is on this in this huddle, they might be needing to hear both large and complex, or let's call it mid-tier market and local region.
Mm-hmm.
If I could jump in for a sec. So, companies look for software at different points. We found it's somewhat identified in our core space when companies tend to reinvent themselves, really, what they need to do to get the next level. So we see, the numbers don't always translate in industry to industry, but for us, it's somewhere around $30 million is one of the first points where a company has to reinvent themselves. They're up until that point, they're running a generic accounting system. They're running a QuickBooks or something, and it's just choking. They're doing a lot of manual processes, but for them, their primary concern at that point really is on sales. So management steps back a little bit. They bring in somebody, generally, a VP of sales or a real hard-hitting sales rep that comes from one of the national accounts, and they're used to using a subset of tools that they have with their other company that they need in order to be able to perform in their new business. So they come to us looking for things like order management, outfitting their sales team, putting in place an omni-channel order management tool that connects their inside, their outside sales. So whether you're a sales maker, an order taker, or an order placer, it's one tool for them. Somewhere around 60 million is really where you start to have logistics challenges. They tend to be busting at the seams. These are guys that have added on to their warehouse multiple times. They're out of space. They either need to find a new building or they're going to acquire somebody else so that they can continue to grow. And their challenges are traditionally on the operations side, where they need to start putting in best practice in the warehouse, and that means a warehouse management system. That might mean a proof of delivery system. They're attracting chain business at that time. Chains are really, demand food safety and traceability concerns. So in order to satisfy those customers, they're going to have to start putting in all those pieces, and they just can't continue to operate, especially in their newer building, on paper. Once you get to 100 million, again, these numbers only translate. $100 million food distributor is a pretty big company. They're moving 20,000 cases a night at least. Their warehouses are in excess of 100,000 square feet. They're multiple DCs. These people are usually generally using all of the software components needed to run their business, but they're looking for process improvement. So their current systems aren't getting them where they need to be. So then they come in and they're looking for us to fine tune a specific area of their business or replace what they have in entirety. But it becomes more challenging because it's you're looking for incremental value. You're not just putting in a new product at that point. So we have to be able to show enough incremental value to replace what they have, rip it and replace it and put ours in. So those are the points of reinvent where you reinvent yourself. And I imagine other industries really work the same way. You have to do something to get to the next step, and often technology is that enabler.
And I think the thing to add to that, if you don't mind me speaking in here, is that at that $100 million level, they're also focused on automation and adding ways of reducing that dependency on manual labor, whether it's conveyors or robotics or goods to person, whatever it might be. That's another focus that they're moving towards.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. I love that. I feel like I'm going to go back and kind of jot some notes. I do think that those levels tend to hold up. We see that within our own business, right? As we've grown, we've gone through similar functions. I mean, I think that's the great thing about what I'm sure what Ignition, your guys' mindset, as well as Barcoding's mindset. I mean, we try to help companies be more efficient, accurate, connected. Well, guess what? That includes ourselves. So as we've grown, we've also looked for these process improvements. So I'm sure you guys have that same mentality. I want to kind of wrap up today's conversation with just a little bit more of a drill down into the proof of delivery sides. We touched upon it, but I wanted to spend just a few more minutes on that, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions and everything. But I want to talk about that. And we have gone over the flexibility, we have gone over what scale means, but from the proof of delivery side, talk to me about if I'm looking at you guys and I have different benchmarks of routes, right? So you guys can serve the needs of, I'm assuming, very large routes, very small routes. Maybe talk to me a little bit about that specific application of your solution.
If I could just start out by telling a quick story of one of our users, their initial experience with our proof of delivery solution. Literally on their first route, their first delivery, very large customer of ours, happens to do a lot of key drops, and key drops are those unattended drops where no one's there to sign for anything. They have a key for the facility, and the product is left behind. Unattended deliveries. So there's a lot of trust that goes on in there. And in this particular situation, a particular case of shrimp was missing. They thought it was missing. And that's not an expensive product to go missing. So without having the proof of delivery, typically the scenario would have been, thank you for letting us know. We'll be more than happy to get another case of shrimp out to you directly. So someone in the warehouse has to go grab it, take it out to a van, station wagon, whatever, run it out to the customer, bring it back, apologize profusely for getting the product, so on and so forth, and doing everything you can to mend that relationship. Well, when they had our proof of delivery, they said, thank you very much for letting us know. Let's take a look at our logs. So they went in and they looked at when that item was scanned, where the item was scanned, because we collected GPS. And as Peter likes to remind me, we also added time to that down, Peter. So we had that other element in your algorithm. So we knew where it was scanned. We knew when it was scanned. We knew what was scanned beforehand and what was scanned directly afterwards. So they were able to say, look for the chicken, look for the halibut, and right in between that, you should probably find the shrimp. Lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So now the customer understood that, hey, you know what? This is great. We didn't lose anything. We didn't miss anything. And thank the distributor for helping them actually locate a particular product. It might have been put away, incorrectly. But for the distributor, not only did it, help that customer understand that they have all the checks and balances in between to make sure that every delivery is perfectly accurate, but it also gave them confidence that the systems they have in place will allow them to do those kind of things. It was a great experience, literally on their first delivery, with the first day out on their first route.
Yeah, that would have been a $500 mistake, by the way, for a case.
Exactly.
To write off the first one, deliver another one, and run a hotshot delivery out there to get them that case. So it instantly starts paying off. So proof of delivery really sort of manages three tenets. You have automation, visibility, and traceability. There's all of those are important because it's a real-time system. So you need to know exactly what's on the truck. You need to know exactly what's getting delivered to the customer. You need to know how much money you're collecting, right? So our system not only allows you to collect cash, but it could take payments and put them right into the bank from the time of delivery. So just like you at home are scanning your checks and depositing them, drivers can do that too. So you don't have to wait for the driver to come back to know how much money is going in the bank that day. You'll know how much cash they're carrying, and what was deposited. So you're cutting down on day sales outstanding. You're eliminating, discrepancies on invoices, and you're automating that process. So nobody's got to manually tally up an invoice, make an adjustment. Somebody's got to key it back in on the other end. That's all taken care of. But going to the 360 view and circling back with that in a 360 way, we do a lot with data collection. Again, to Peter's point, and it's not just scan data. As David said, we do a lot with scan data, but it's also getting intelligence while you're out there. The driver is one of the best intelligence gatherers you can have. So let's say you have their produce business, but you want to get their meat business. Well, a salesman might not have the ability to go into their cooler, but a driver does. So you might flag that driver, hey, while you're there, take a picture of the storeroom, or hey, who are they buying their tenderloin from? Driver can go ahead and be prompted for that and enter that information. So it gives the salesman the inside edge as to how to be able to work that account. We can do things with new accounts. When you get there, I want the driver to take a picture of the dock. I want them to record, are they readily available to get a check from if you're getting a COD type thing. Any kind of information you need the driver to be able to accomplish from there, you can gather that. And that data is all accessible and reportable. So if I want to see how long am I spending per, how many cases do I deliver per mile, or how many dollars do I get per mile, or how many minutes per case am I doing? You'll find things where drivers are hanging out, flirting with, the girl at the loading dock in one store, or you're just gonna identify those things, and cutting down on errors and recording scan data. So let's say I deliver a case and I scan it and it says not wrong stop. Well, let's say I go 2 stops later and the driver flags that case as not on truck. Well, we know it was on the truck. He scanned it 2 stops earlier, so we know exactly where it is. And because that's real time, if they do flag something as not on truck for whatever reason, the warehouse is notified of that. And the warehouse can have somebody short chasing, tracking down where that case might be.
in real time.
So that your inventory is accurate. So POD plays in a lot of different ways, to make the company money. Again, visibility into what's going on, automation, and traceability. I always liken it to when I put my kids on the school bus in the morning, and I don't know what happens. I know they go to school. I assume they get there, otherwise they'd call me, but I don't know what they're doing, and I don't see them again until they come home. Well, it's amazing how many companies run their business that way. The drivers leave in the morning with invoices and inventory, and they don't know what's sold. They don't know what's returned. They don't know what's damaged. They don't know what money they've collected. They don't even know where the driver went. So this is a system that's going to monitor all of that for them so that they can be running their business and not having to wait for the driver to come back.
It is, by the way, it is worth calling out. Everything Jonathan just talked about is our solutions, not farmed out to any other component or any other piece.
It's incredible. I love the fact that, even the word POD or the acronym, it's so much bigger than that, right? So it's like if someone's thinking proof of delivery, they may be very narrowly focused, but you just outlined like what that really means to the business. And I really love that example. I also love the fact that this is, once again, why this is such a great partnership. Having the technology, the mobile technology to be able to enable those drivers to go out and do all those things. It's kind of the natural fit between barcoding and ignition. So
if I can weigh in from that side, because you and I were instrumental in bringing these two groups together, everything that we've talked about talked about capturing data.
Yep.
That visibility requires some level of infrastructure that you guys provide. And that's what makes this partnership not only strategic between the two entities that are on this call, but you think about the benefit that the customer gets by having this kind of relationship. It's invaluable.
That's everyone out there listening to this huddle too. We're talking to you. We're talking directly to you. You guys can benefit from this partnership. So, well, this has been, I obviously, we all could talk for days together, and I hopefully that we will be able to do this again sometime in the near future. But I want to thank you all so much for your insights and your participation in today's huddle with Barcoding Ignition by Telus. This has been a great talk. I like to end with an on-the-spot question, usually a key takeaway. So I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that while I tell the audience that this is your last shot to ask a live question. So if you do have a live question, throw it in the chat. If not, there's some email addresses there for you to take advantage of. We would love to talk to you about your business. So no pressure. We just kind of want to learn, what are you dealing with? What are you seeing out there? Where do you want to improve? We'll take it from there, but we would love to talk to you. So feel free to reach out. That said, key takeaways. So this is something, what's that most important thing that you want the audience to remember after today's session? And Jim, my buddy, I'm going to start with you. What do you think that key takeaway is from your perspective?
I thought you were going to position it a different way. So I'm going to steal what I think David is thinking about right now.
Strategic.
I would suggest the audience is to think about is across your supply chain, what's keeping you up at night? And come back to Barcoding or come back to us and ask that question of us to answer later.
Love it. Yeah, now I have to go to David because you might have
No, I've got nothing to say.
Right.
Thanks, Jim. No, the only thing I would add to that is that I think the most important thing that people can remember coming out of COVID is to listen.
Yes, I love that. I think that's something that I haven't heard people really say that succinctly and that well. So
let me introduce you to my father. He'll tell you flat out, there's one reason you got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yep. Love it. It's good fatherly advice here on today's call. So Jonathan, for our audience, what do you want to leave them thinking?
Yeah, so I go back to the theme of flexibility again. And if your current systems are so rigid that you can't adapt to changing conditions in a fast way to better your business, save your business in some instances, then you need to start looking somewhere else.
great, great note. And
or enhancing, I should say. Maybe not.
enhancing, yeah, and dealing with all those new business models, right? Taking advantage of all those new opportunities, those conveniences that we talked about. Peter, I'm gonna leave almost the last words to you.
Well, I would say for your supply chain, if you're looking at your X, your Y, and your Z, and T for time, how much can you actually see? How much do you need to see, but how much can you actually see? That's what this is all about. Having that degree of visibility.
Thank you for that. I'm stealing that. Don't steal mine, I'm stealing yours.
We've got some, by the way, we have tremendous statistics for customers and labor savings, all because of, that type of XYZ coordinate based, action in the warehouse for picking paths and that sort of thing. You heard from Super King that had a 30% reduction in labor.
Mm-hmm.
What they didn't say is at the same time they opened up a new facility and they also absorbed a huge increase in minimum wage in Los Angeles, and still were able to take a 30% reduction in labor costs. They grew their business 25% during that time, but they took a 30% reduction in labor costs. We have other customers that have told us they've had a 64% reduction in labor costs. So
Wow.
that exactly what you're saying, that XYZ and the way that you look at your data and the way that you can move around the warehouse and make the right decision in real time helps to reduce those costs.
Well, I want to thank our strategic partner, Ignition by Telus. Really thrilled to have you on today's huddle with barcoding. Very much appreciate your participation. Again, I'm Jody Costa, I'm the VP of Marketing here. I encourage everyone who's listening to this live and who will be listening to this recording, be sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is where you'll be able to find great content like this one. Be sure to reach out with your key questions. We want to help you sleep better at night and really take care of some of these challenges that you're facing out there. We see huge opportunity and would love to help you take advantage of that. So thank you again, Jim, Jonathan, David, Peter. Thank you everyone out there. Really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to talking with you again soon. Have an amazing day out there, everyone. And keep listening.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody.
Hi, did you enjoy the huddle? I sure hope so. We were really excited to have you as part of our conversation and would love to continue it. If you have a question or a challenge that you're facing and barcoding can help you out, please reach out. You can contact us on barcoding.com anytime or any of our social media channels. Again, we are here to help and would love to chat with you. Final ideas. Did you like the huddle so much you wanted to join? Do you want to come on air with me? Do you know someone who would be a great fit or a topic that you'd like to see covered? If so, reach out to me via email or LinkedIn, and I am happy to check in with you and talk through what we might be able to accomplish together. I would love to hear your ideas. We're always looking for new topics. So if you have an idea for Huddle or you'd like to be on a Huddle, contact me and we will make it happen. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.